you planning to run it to 7?
Probably 6:30. Islam,
Peace.
peace and hotep. We want to send a shout out to the Moors online that's continuing to stay in tune with Canaanland Moors. We also want to send a shout out to all the Moors worldwide, because we know that the order of the day is nationality and proclaiming our birthright. You know, a couple bills, pay a couple bills. We have to put out there the new issue of the Masonic Gate is available. moorciviletter.net/Masonic Gate. You can get your your copy of the Moorish Gate newspaper, which is distributed now in Canaanland as well. The paper is founded by Brother Abdul Talib Mozi Bey, who started up the Moorish Civil Letter website, Moorish, CIVILETTR.net. And Moorish Civil Letter is based in getting our people back into the correct perspective with regard to Masonry, with regard to Islam, with regard to Christianity, with regard to Judaism, with regard to astrology, astronomy, as well as etymology and knowing the origin of words. The other thing we got going on the 28th of the month at the Rock Pile East, 2787 Eglinton Avenue East. We got the Ghostface, the legendary Ghostface Killer of the Wu-Tang, having a concert out here. And of course, yours truly with the family from One Oak. If you haven't heard from them or heard anything from them, go check it out. One Oak Hip Hop Music will be opening. I think we're second from what I heard last night at the rehearsal. We're second from Ghostface, so we're pretty close to pretty much opening for them. I think there's about 10 or 12 acts, and we're supposed to be going up 11th. All right, we got the tickets. $40 for the tickets. If you want tickets for the Ghostface show, you can get at the Moor Science Temple of America, CanaanlandGuide@gmail.com. And make sure you get them early, because Europeans, they don't play. The Europeans love their hip hop, so they're gonna be getting their tickets. So make sure you get yours. Today's class is paperwork. Paperwork cannot save you. Paperwork cannot save you. Now, a lot of people have been to rvbaypublications.com and have downloaded their name declaration, correction, proclamation, and publication notice, as well as their judicial notice and proclamation. So what we want to stress is the point stress is the point that nationality is not because you have a card, it's not because you have a card for papers, right? One, because the card is just a piece of plastic or whatever, and papers is paper. So the concept of, of paperwork, as far as a Moorish perspective, means writs. The concept of paperwork from a Moorish perspective means writs. And writs are just written documents. The reason why we're putting this like this is because there's a thing out there called paper terrorism. There's a thing out there called paper terrorism. Right? In 2012, in Georgia, they took a position in Georgia of quote unquote fighting paper terrorism, and the FBI being done with it. Because their perspective is that anti-government individuals that call themselves sovereign or sovereign citizens continue to defy the law across the country, and government officials are fighting back. First thing we have to recognize and realize is that these so-called people, like we're talking about, that say that they're officials of something, they're not officials of anything, right? They're criminals, right? They have no sense of constitutional or no sense of respect for constitutionality. Their position is corporate. It's always going to be corporate, right? So if they're corporate, they're not official, but they have their little minions in, Southern Poverty Law Center and all these different little organizations, that push their position, right? So that they can keep the fraud going, keep the fraud alive, because, these guys came out and said the government officials are doing something, so that's the position that the quote-unquote dumb public take, that these people know what they're talking about when they say certain people are government officials. So in reading things that are put out there by the so-called government that's telling people that they're anti-government, right? We have to be mentally on point to recognize when they're playing these games. Like when they say, I'm Canadian or I'm American, but they're European. You can't be, native, Aboriginal, Indigenous, but if we trace you back, you're from Europe, right? Another thing with American, when you hear that people are identifying themselves as American, but they don't look like copper-toned people, they don't look like the true Aboriginal, Indigenous people like Olmecs, right? Know that claim of American does not just exist in North America, right? That claim of American is North, South, Central, adjoining islands, and anything else that was in this jurisdiction of the Americas. So if a European says, I'm American, or I'm Canadian, right? Our position is to question them on what jurisdiction are they talking about. So if you say you're Canadian, then technically you're saying you're America because Canada's in North America, right? But, you know, Mexico is in North America. Mexicans don't call themselves Canadian, right? Peru is in America. But Europeans that say that they're American, they're not talking about Peru when they say I'm American. They're talking about the jurisdiction above Mexico and below Canada, which they identify on the map as United States, but they don't say that they're United Statesians. They might say U.S. citizen, right? That's probably right. They might say United States national or whatever, but they won't say United Statesian. Like they say Canadian, Brazilian, Mexican. Because if they say United Statesian, immediately you know that's a fraud because, you know, it doesn't even sound like anything that you would say as a identification marker, right, for a people in a particular jurisdiction, right? So they enacted legislation making it a felony to file fraudulent liens against the property of public officials or employees, a sovereign tactic known as paper terrorism. Okay, so when Moors say paperwork, you know, you got your paperwork, you send your paperwork to the court, what is the paperwork or whatever, right? We're talking about writs. We're not talking about liens and, you know, trying to cause confusion in so-called courts, right? When we say paperwork, Moors are talking about writ of discovery, quo warranto, default judgments, paperwork that's based in written documents that are sent to a jurisdiction in order to put a particular status, whatever, on the record, to give notice. Because, you know, a lot of Moors get themselves caught up in stuff by not being specific, thinking that, you know, if Moors say it, then that's what. If Moors say it, they'll probably lump you in with some other stuff. For example, in Fort Worth, Texas, James Michael Tessie was found guilty in January of assaulting a police officer in a shooting outside his home. According to news reports, Tessie and the officer exchanged at least 15 shots in July when the officer tried to arrest him on traffic warrants. Tessie, who was shot in the leg and face, claims he is a Moorish American, not a U.S. citizen. Right? Now, James Michael Tessie's claim, you know, we don't know because they have Tessie here. That's not no Moorish American name or nothing like that. Right? But the fact that he was found guilty in January for assaulting and then he, you know, exchanged 15 shots. And he was shot in the leg, shot in the face, whatever like that. But then when you go back to Noble Drew Ali, and Noble Drew Ali told Moors, don't even carry a pocket knife, you have to ask yourself, you know, okay, well, who's really at fault? If Drew Ali said don't carry a pocket knife, right? Then anything over and beyond the pocket knife is in supreme violation of what he laid down. You know, and you know, if you can defend it, then hey, everything will be all right. You know, because you know what times we're living in or whatever like that, you know, mobs out there, clan, skinheads, whoever else, you know, depending on where you live, you might need to protect yourself because, you know, it's not about not having a pocket knife out here. You need to have, you better have something out here. Because these guys put crosses on people's lawn and whatever. Right? So you might have to have something. But when it gets into things like this, you know, getting out, because, you know, Moors forget that when you say that you're Moors, you now become, you know, all eyes on you, especially if something goes wrong. Forget if stuff goes right. But when stuff goes wrong, all of a sudden all the cameras come out, you know what I mean? CNN all of a sudden knows who the Moors are, you know what I mean? You know, ABC or whatever, they got their top reporter reporting on whatever because, you know, there was a shootout and the guy who was shooting out gave a Moorish nationality card. Right? So they're going to use it against Moors. So Moors have to be very, 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 very mindful of when they speak, especially to these criminals, and making sure that they know exactly what they're saying when they say things, right? So we're putting it out there for Moors to recognize that paper terrorism is real, right?
But on both sides too, though, right?
From what perspective?
From the fact that what even they're doing is a de facto thing, that's paper terrorism as well.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, right? All of that, every document that they're giving you is a form of paper
Is a form of paper terrorism as well, right? Everything that they send to you in all capital letters name is paper terrorism.
I came to this thought a little bit ago, or not a little bit, even just now, is that you know, they go around the world focusing on everyone else about the so-called terrorist activity and the wrong that they do, yet they're engaged in everything that they're trying to point everyone else to do.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's the whole game, right? To keep you diverted, right? It's always been that diversion and separation, right?
And this was the um, this was the motive of people trying to tie Moorish perspective to freeman, sovereign, citizen, whatever, right? Trying to make this mesh of two things that don't mesh, right? Which is why, you know, Moors who are studious, constitutional, civic-minded, they don't play the perspective of go put a lien on somebody and go, you know what I mean, sue judge because, you know, you put your status on the record, they didn't recognize it, so we're going to sue, right? Because as a studious Moor, you know that those people who have a claim to be a court or claim to be whatever, they're bankrupt, dissolved since 1933, and they don't have any power whatsoever called governmental authority. And the only governmental authority they have is what we give them. Because they say government official, and we go, you know, well, let me see your whatever. But we already know they don't got nothing to show, to prove that they're government. They don't have nothing. They know they're going to go in the back, pull out, you know, whatever, and say, oh yeah, here's my authority to be or whatever. But then, you know, the plaque in front of the building says administrative building. And then the courthouse sign says business hours, not court hours. So when we hear them try to tie Moors to sovereign citizens, know that they're trying to tie your writs to paper terrorism. They're trying to tie your Aboriginal indigenous customs to some posse, comitatus, European, off the grid, free man on the land. This is how, you know, we get ourselves free from under the shackles of the government that's abusing people. When there's not no connection. The perspective is that we are the government, which is why we're making these demands with writs, affidavits of fact. All our documents got seals on them. You're not going to find any sovereign citizen, European, whatever group out there claiming to be sovereign with a seal. You go check their documents online and they don't got seals. And if their position is that they're sovereign, then they should have a seal. But now this is where it gets into us coming to the realization that the individuals like CSIS, FBI, RCMP, CIA, all these agencies that are coming after these individuals that call themselves sovereign or whatever, they're actually taking the right position because those guys really are a fraud. But FBI, CIA, who else? They're not saying that they're a fraud too, which is the further issue, right? That they're a fraud, calling out some frauds, but they won't call out the fraud on themselves that they've been bankrupt since 1933. And the only reason that they have, buildings and whatever else that they keep building is because these idiots that think that they have a status going and voting and stuff like that, keeping these corrupt people in power, not recognizing that these people are fraud. What are you voting for? They're a fraud. They have no intention of standing up to anything constitutional or doing anything right or whatever, right? Just like there was found this article. Actually, I was thinking about you when I found this one right here. Innocent man arrested at baby shower and jailed, sues police. So the story goes, brother locked up on Thanksgiving weekend in prison for the first time of his life. Could not wrap his head around how an afternoon at a cousin's baby shower had ended with his arrest and a 3-night stay in custody. Right? So he's chilling at the baby shower in the building of the house or whatever, right? Goes upstairs to the house to go chill. And when he goes upstairs to the house gets raided. And he gets arrested, dragged underground a little bit, whatever, he's in there, so he's going down for whatever's in the house. You're here, right? Alleges that, Toronto, quote-unquote, police officers, they're not officers, but they weren't elected to office. They went and applied for a job like anybody else out here. So they're not an officer. But, they have their minions to push this perspective to get everybody to, give energy to they are police officers. And once you give them the energy, then they're about to abuse. And you might be the one that they abuse because you gave them your stuff. Instead of calling them like they are mercenaries, highwaymen, criminals, right? Interesting. Sparks, then a tech support employee at a downtown law firm, says he spent the 2012 Thanksgiving weekend in custody after getting caught up in a police raid. Last week, filed $1 million lawsuit against Toronto Police Services Board Chief Bill Blair and 9 officers involved in the raid. The suit claims false arrest, negligence, assault, intentional infliction of mental anguish, malicious prosecution, and multiple breaches of quote-unquote Sparks' charter rights. Right? So we're talking about his charter rights. His charter rights got violated. Right? The charter rights for people who should understand out here more that are outside of our jurisdiction come from the Constitution come from out of the Constitution Act, which act, right? Act is not law. So the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that so-called, Negro, black, colored people in Canada say give them the right to whatever, do this and do that, is from the Constitution Act, which act is not law. That's why it's called the Act, and that's why it's actors, and they pay them millions of dollars to be something that they're not in a movie, and then after the movie's done, they stop being actors, they be themselves. Same thing with Constitution Act. So that's what an act is. Right? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in the play and all that stuff. Right? So his charter rights being violated and being put in the suit that's what was violated shows that he's a ward. W-A-R-D. Ward. And if he's a ward, he's property. And why is he property? Just like Dred Scott. He's saying that his name Sparks, and he's suing some, so-called police officers or whatever like that for violating his rights. But he's suing in a European name when he's Asiatic. Right? And this suit that he's filing technically is fraud and should be considered paper terrorism. Just like somebody else's stuff that they send violating something is called paper terrorism. His suit that he's filing as a European when he's Asiatic, which means that it's fraud off the bat. It's already fraud because he's not Sparks. So he can't sue in that name. Right? Suing in that name is paper terrorism. Because, he's faking. It's a bogus claim. But if they came out and said that this is a bogus claim, then they give up some of the game that they're playing. Whereas it's not about them giving up the game. It's about the game being perpetuated. So, Toronto Star is going to put him in the newspaper, have his picture or whatever like that, make this thing a big thing, start going through their little, past reports or whatever, and then somebody's going to come out do a report on all the police, people take advantage of people, you might be up in there, so you're then, arrested for no reason or whatever like that. How come police are doing this? The black people are only getting this treatment. How come nobody else is going through all this stuff? And they'll have this big thing in the newspaper, for weeks or whatever. And then they keep talking about black people, and then the Charter of Rights being violated and all this stuff, and everybody goes with it. And all the black leaders get down and they jump on the bandwagon and they're like, yeah, we should sue them for all this stuff, when they're being paper terrorists, committing a fraud. But ultimately, just like you were saying, with your situation, I don't want to sue them. It's not like I want to sue them. I just want to be compensated for, what you guys said that you did wrong. And then, I forgot the name of the people. And then, everybody who's thinking about suing, ex gratia. Ex gratia. So, sister was thinking about suing, and then, you know, she was talking to some lawyers and stuff like that, and, you know, everybody wants retainer fee, and everybody wants, you know, and then one lawyer slipped and said, well, you don't have to sue them, you could just, ex gratia. Oh yeah, my retainer fee is whatever, so, you can just pay me and I'll do the ex gratia for you, and, immediately lights went off, light bulb went off, and she realized that you don't need no retainer anymore, right? So, ex gratia, out of grace, as a matter of grace, favor, or indulgence. Gratuitous, a term applied to anything accorded as a favor, as distinguished from that which may be demanded ex debito, as a matter of right. So they have this window called ex gratia, where if you were, quote unquote, treated unfairly, right, by so-called government officials, whoever, whatever, right, you can, keep in mind, you can apply for ex gratia. And then if your application is successful, then they'll grant you whatever you deserve as a favor, to be gratuitous to your position, which, this is really to stop them from being sued and getting paid out, or lose their job or whatever like that, right? So there's this ex gratia, which, could be utilized based on the fact that we know that all these guys are a fraud or whatever, and to go sue them, you're probably not going to get what, they'll throw it out over some error that you made, going there in false name or whatever like that, the court being false. They'll even say that the defendant is false in your suit in order to throw it out. Just like how they did with Marcus Garvey, right? That they said, Marcus Garvey, defendant in error. United States of government or United States, plaintiff in error. Right? If both of them in error, then there's no case. That's why they were able to just pick him up, transfer him to wherever it is that they were transferring him to, because, he was their property, he called himself Garvey. Right?
I just think we talked about this briefly on the phone before. Fortunately, if you have been carrying on your business in a wardship and slave status, right? Then these 14th Amendment and these acts and this Canadian Constitution Act sort of apply to you,
right?
Because it's fraudulent, right? You so ultimately, as you and I were briefly talking about before, that may be the position to sort of have to sort of at least argue in, because the instant you take on your free national name, you become the court,
right?
You become the judge,
right?
But then, of course, you're then talking to
people who are assuming to be the judge or whatever,
and then it probably in a real way they can sort of escape from that through some of that.
Right. Well, again,
sort of
if we use Grand Chief Nature's suit, right? When they sued Asbury Park and all these other, fraudulent jurisdictions for stealing his stuff, they argued, diversity of citizenship to get out of it.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
At the end of the game, they came back. So ultimately, where you may have some recourse within this is that you may want to sort of, because ultimately what this is it's still all a so-called financial game, which is really an energy game, right? They have sort of done wrong to their property, in a sense, under certain dynamics.
Right.
They've done wrong to their property. Now, you may be like, so what Grand Chief was saying here is that funny how these same corporations decide to then jump on the law when it suits them.
Right.
In Asbury Park.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's
all
diversity.
All of a sudden
diversity.
Right.
We don't know who you are. You're different.
Yeah.
So really, what you want to do is you probably want to remain within your dead status or your slave status, and talk to them about how you wronged your property.
Right.
But what the issue I'm saying to you is, yet again, they're always feeding off of the energies.
Yeah.
So, a lawyer might want retainer.
Right.
But ultimately, the lawyer, you may get, let's say, lawyer may want $2,000 retainer, as an example. You may get $100,000.
Yeah.
They may get their little portion back again
somehow.
But that's how you may have to work it.
Right.
Right. So
right.
that's just,
and the other thing too is that you know, Moors, with regard to what you're saying, doing things as the straw or in that capacity, right? That's not. You're not taking that position if you have something against you. So something small like what you got, right? $30 ticket, you know, you don't want to fight or whatever like that. You're gonna go in because you know fiat, you know whatever you can't send.
No, but let's be more clear on that. The reason why that was it was costing more money to send.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, sorry,
that's what I was going through.
Sorry.
That's what I'm going through. That you know, because of finances, not being able to send out writs and things like that for the case, it's small, $30 or whatever. You know what I mean? Ain't no jail time, nothing in that. Go in there as a strong man, beat them up with Moorish mindset, but in that status.
Wait, sorry, just to let me interrupt though too. Even in the so-called corporate status that they're still attacking with, they don't have any lawful
position. Yeah,
they're not even judge.
Right.
Whether you're property or not,
they don't have the authority.
They ain't even judge. So
you're on their playing field.
Right.
When you go in there with Smith, Jones, Johnson, whatever name.
King.
Right? King, whatever. You're in their court. Right? Ball's in their court and you're on their side, hitting to an empty side.
But you can still call them out as still even being in the so-called fraudulent thing as just sort of still being frauds.
Right.
Right. And get that stuff on the record.
Right.
Too.
So with Brother Omar's situation, instead of them fighting the fact that he's calling them out on the fraud or whatever, right? They said, okay, we'll bring it down to $10 or whatever. Oh, we'll just wipe it out. Just so they don't have to go through the motions of, you know, defending this fraudulent position that they're upholding when the individual who's coming at them is a fraud themselves. But they can't call out that, you know, well, you're running a fraud, so you can't talk to us like we're running a fraud. You're running a fraud because they're the ones that put him in that fraudulent position with a birth certificate. Which it's still gonna come back to them if they make the argument to try to defend their position when you come as straw. But we're saying all that to say that if the stuff is small, or if it's a situation where something happened to you and you know that they owe you something, right? To get it, you can do the straw have the mindset, have the energy correct, so that when you do go in that position, it's not gonna fully fall back on you. You know,
because it's beautiful that you mentioned that. Ultimately, it still is about karma.
Right.
Karma will come back. Whether judge may walk out the street and get run over by a vehicle right afterwards.
Right.
That could be the kind of karma. Now, it may not answer any of your stuff per se to what you're really looking for, but sometimes you have to. This is all about your path in life too, right? I'm sure. For all the negative stuff that possibly happened, there was positive had to come. Because with negative comes positive.
Right.
Right?
Right. There's always a blessing in disguise or whatever. Right? So we now, you know, and because I know the lookers or whatever are gonna start, you know, oh yeah, Kupo said he would be a straw man, he's not a real Moor or whatever, he's telling you to be a straw man, right? That's not what the perspective is. Right? The idea is recognizing that you are going to be blocked if you have something owed to you from these people. and you say, well, give me that in my free national name as a Moor, you're not getting nothing.
Again.
It's not happening. It never will happen because these people are criminals, one. And two, if they give it to you in that status, then they're done for. They have a hole in the coffin, right? They're in it, and they're nailing themselves in. That's not happening.
But what they can do, because of karma, even in the dead state, you can put them into a corner where, at the end of the day, they sort of have to look. They have to look up for their own karmatic good, and they have to say, okay, well, we did wrong, so we got to give a little something up.
Yeah, because remember, like we were talking about, that's why the whole issue. People didn't look at the vastness of the issue with, does Barack Obama have a birth certificate? How is he a president and he doesn't have a birth certificate? He should have a birth certificate and all this type of stuff, right? That's talking about the astrological realm, like we're talking about, right? They don't have any ties to go, do some hexes on him. Like how they do with us, like how they set up your stuff for April 1st, convict you on April 1st. Right?
Yeah, that's all.
That's all astrological.
And that's what everything is based on.
Right? Yeah.
Everything is truly based on that, and that's what they're running their stuff on. But we keep going into default by agreeing with it all, and playing the game with them, even in our mindset.
Right. Or not doing, or not doing what we were talking about earlier with the stamp. Reserve your rights when you sign stuff with these criminals. So that way, your rights are reserved. Because, if you have rights and you're dealing with criminals, and you know that they're criminals, you better reserve them. Because, like the brother's saying, it's really an energy game. It's really not about stealing your rights. It's about jacking your energy. It's really not about taxing you. It's about taking your energy.
You know what? This is a beautiful analogy. It's like them being the vampires. They're coming to your neck to suck on it. And rather than going like this,
you're putting it up.
Yeah. Right? So they're taking it freely. So that's where it takes into your karma.
And then want to sue after when they bite you.
Right.
When you put your neck up to get bit. You know what I mean? Right?
And sort of just on the side, this is what I realized when we were talking about some of this stuff. Since unfortunately it was our parents who, or our mothers, or the people who brought us into this who, in a sense, or our foreparents who, because this has been around for a long period of time, and we shouldn't even be in this state. We have to look at the fact that it was people before us who also helped do this, right?
Right.
So if you're in this corporate state and you're looking to, and you're in the corporate name, but you're also a free national really, and that's just a straw. For example, if you're in employment, Brandon Cheek can speak to this too. Sometimes, that little piece of payment that you're looking for, you go apply for your little EI thing, right? It really is a fraud too.
Right.
But ultimately, you've been paying into that. That's something within this fraudulent jurisdiction. Really, you shouldn't be accessing. But ultimately, if they've been taxing you fraudulently, then you should be able to receive the benefits. Now, of course, that's where you get that your cooperation.
Yeah.
So really, you shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
But like our Grand Chief said too, you have to also then weigh the stuff. If it's like if you've got work or job, and you need to keep feeding your family, and if you come in there in your free national name and say, I don't want any taxes take off, they're going to fire you or not give you, you may have to, because that's under threat, duress, and coercion. What they're doing is by gunpoint, they're saying you better agree to this or you're going to die. So you have to step in right now. And that's what a lot of the times we have to do. So you have to then take that into your situation. If I'm going to do this, to fight them on the free national name, it's going to be crazy. Right? So you may have to look at where you're at, keep doing, what do they say? Keep doing doing new stuff in your free national name.
And old stuff, keep it the same.
You just do the same.
Right? And recognize that when you get into the perspective of I'm a Moor, but you have, nigger issues, right? The paperwork, the card, isn't going to help you with those issues. What's going to help you is your mindset. How your spirit is going to help you with these situations that you're dealing with, right? Not necessarily because like if we look at um, like Sister Pilar's situation, right? She was married to an ex-football player, Hall of Fame guy, whatever like that, and she can't even see her children right now because she said she's a Moor. If she said straw, they're still kind of blocking her as straw because if she comes as straw, if she comes in that fraudulent position as far as her name's concerned, she's spiritually compromising herself. So for herself, she can't go that way because for her it's just not like she can't do the switch back over, right? Like how some people could do the jump the fence, right? Her taking that position, they're fighting her tooth and nail. She's not even looking for nothing. She's not trying to sue nobody. She's not trying to get nothing. She's not trying nobody to go to jail, nothing like that. All she wants is access to her children. That she has an order from the court saying that she can go pick them up on Thursday and bring them back Monday. And they're blocking that. And there's an order. It's not like, she's fraudulently going over there, pick them up or whatever. She has something from the court saying, yeah, you can go pick them up. And when she goes there, 5 cop cars there or whatever. Then she has an order. Right? But then, when you look at what she's dealing with, her stuff is so gigantic that, they have to put the wall of brass up and pretend like they don't see nothing going on, even though there's all these holes in this brass fence that they got up, claiming that it's a gate, wall, or whatever, And, that's what we're saying with the perseverance. Sometimes, when you get on this side, know that, they're not giving up. Nobody Ali told them more. You think this European's giving up? You're not giving up because you got a gun in his face. And that's not, and he said don't carry pocket knives, so don't get it twisted that he's saying, go up there.
What he's saying is that when we finally get them to the point where it's the death that they're facing because of all of the karmatic stuff they do, that's the only time they're going to come and turn around.
Right. And it's for us to know that when we say, legal notice, name declaration, correction, proclamation, and judicial proclamation, right? This is this. This isn't this. This is this. Other people's perspective is, this is going to make me this. Well, if this was written by somebody else, and they have their energy on this will never be this. Right? Because you can't, it doesn't go that way. Logically.
That's probably where, in certain ways, they can call it fraud. Because if you're walking around saying that you're something else, but you can't defend it,
then you're a fraud.
Right.
And majority of people can't defend it because they think that this is this.
But that comes from the dumbing down that the European has done. They've not allowed you to utilize all of your brain, so that therefore they made that's the worship thing where they're always giving you the bottle to suck on.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to go and milk. So just as the analogy, you don't have to go and till the field yourself. Here, we're going to give you it.
Yeah.
And at the time when it comes, when the field is barren and you need to go and plant your seed, you don't know how to do it.
Right.
So you now are dependent on them, and that's always been the case for them.
And that's all. And even that too. That term, being dependent. People become dependent on this, not dependent on this.
And that's where the lawyers and all of these people who represent you come from.
Right, because the lawyers are this. Well, yeah, give me 5,000 and now I'll put this in the paper.
And they're quoting case law and
right?
thing and judge and
right. All just like we're talking about, all these external stuff, external things, External things gonna save you. External things gonna help you. When really it's about internalizing and then put it external. For it to have some type of, for it to have substance,
Well, to have the energy.
right? To have the energy, right? Again, to have the substance. You're not drinking this because it's Arthur's smoothies and whatever, right? Energy. This has more energy than bottle of Coke. So we go with this energy opposed to Coca-Cola.
One thing I want to bring up to you too, you're here because of stuff that's happened to you in your previous energies. All that stuff that happened has brought you here. You have to see this as really an awakening for you on a different level. This may not be solved. This thing may not go the way you want it to go. You have now taken a turn to where to becoming free. And for the little one,
Right.
Is your daughter, for your heir, to bring her into this. That's probably
At her age, opposed to her getting it when she's your age.
so that she will never go through that.
Go through that, or from the jump.
And that's purely what mother is.
Right, and then that's the same thing with Sister Pilar. That she spent so much time around her children that her children are her, around this crazy man that they have to call dad, who's against everything that she's for, and she taught them, and then trying to beat it out of them, yell it out of them, whatever. But it's you can't budge a mother's lessons, especially if they're based in truth and right and morality and things like that.
Truth never changes. Truth never changes. So the lesson you tell her today, if it's the truth, will be the same 100 years from now.
Right. And then that's why we do the Black's Law Dictionary 1, 2, 3, and 1, 4, 5, 6. Don't even
7.
Because the past stuff is still the same now.
And that's
So the etymology, the past, whatever something meant back then, this is what it means now. You can't say black means dark-skinned people in 2014 when it meant pale in 5th century. Like, you know what I mean? And when we take the position of making things that are not real, instead of using your mind, you use paper. Right? When paper is not really the mentality. Paper is what came based on the mentality. Right? Like Moor say, you have to be in the temple to be a Moor. If you're not in the temple, you're not a Moor. Well, Juali said that the flag is 50,000 years old. And you can't have a flag without people. And if that's a Moroccan flag, then that means the people were Moroccan 50,000 years ago. And there were no temple 50,000 years ago. So they can't say that, the temple is the government. When that came in 1913, and we're talking about 50,000 years of history without that institution called Moorish Science Temple. But if people aren't studying, if people are only looking at the exterior things, then we get lost. On top of that, you have people who are pushing exterior perspectives, not wanting the people to get internal. Because as soon as people get internal, they realize all these guys out here are fraud. They've been playing them, and the people have taken a position of not doing anything about it because they trust these guys. Because he's been teaching me for 50 years, and it's our brother and all this. But he's not telling me about national birthright, and he knows about it. Right? So when you have the concept, when you have the perspective, all the exterior things that you deal with becomes easy. Because the exterior things are an illusion. They will pass away. The interior things, the esoteric things, the things that aren't, the things that are mental, auric, you know, internalized, you know, self-realization is better than finding God outside yourself. You know, if our God exists outside yourself. But really, you should be looking at the inside God. You know, if majority of people, if we say to people, if we say to people, what's on your nationality paperwork? They're gonna say, oh, on my nationality paperwork is, you know, and then page 2 says it's supposed to be here already. It's not supposed to be something that you have to refer to. As soon as you have to refer to it, that means that, you know, your scale's like this. But it shouldn't have to be something that, you know, is used in that perspective. It should be something that you can stand up for, and that standing up for it is what's gonna determine whether, you know, it's legit or, you know, this guy's really not saying what he's or who he is, or okay, that's it, right? There was one question online about how Moors or any national can join and help fight for our rights. The best thing that Moors could do to help fight is when they see somebody in adversity, to assist them. Especially if that individual is in adversity and they've taken certain steps to try to fight for themselves. Again, we use, you know, Pilar's situation, because, you know, it's grand. If she beats her stuff, Moors win all over the world. And they know that. That's why they fight her. Because, you know, he's a Hall of Famer guy. Right? She's gonna say she used Twitter, Facebook, or something like that. Put something out there. You know, judges are corrupt, blah, 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 whatever, right? Then all these people, you know, like tweets, you know, like posts, like this, you know, they comment, you know, oh yeah, you know, that's good, you know, keep standing up, you know, they show moral support or whatever like that, but nobody never shares the stuff. How's the word getting out if nobody's not sharing it? How are people gonna know what's going on if the word's not getting out about what's going on? So, you know, Brother Abdullah realized that, hey, there's, you know, whatever, founded this paper called Masonic Gate. Oh yeah, you know, we need more newspapers and whatever that, but none of these people that say that they're Moors are being a distributor of that. Not only that, they're not even, you know, buying bundles so that the word could get out on this information that they recognize is legit, because, you know, all of his views on YouTube have, you know, thousands of hits or whatever. So obviously people's watching this stuff. Well, you know, you go buy some papers and get the word out. So the best thing that Moors can do to help with fighting for rights, etc., like that, is to support people who are already fighting. Support people, and we're not talking about, you know, again, it comes back to perspective. You know, we're not talking about people who are doing wayward stuff and then want to say, oh yeah, you know, Moorish nationality, you know, help me get off gun charge, help send my writs around. Right? We're talking about people who are in real situations where it wasn't them. They're being violated. Right? Because a lot of people get themselves in stuff and want help out of stuff they got themselves into. When, you know, you got yourself, you know, you make your bed, like, you can't really play like that because we have all these layered things going on, right? And then people's perspective of what to be a Moor is based on something they seen somewhere or something they heard, not based on what they internalized it to be for themselves. So already perspective is warped. Just like we're saying, if you say, you know, I want to be a Moor, you find out about, you know, you can get this paperwork from this website, whatever like that, you know what I mean, that, you know, is particular to Moors, and then putting people on notice about their claim of being Moors. That's not a download the document, change the name, and then just set it up. That's, you better download, you better read that 50 times or whatever, make that be part of you, right? And then maybe retype it a couple of times. And then after you retype it a couple of times, you know, you read it over again, because you really want this to be something that is part of you before it's sent out. You really want to, you know, when you say, know thyself, like, that's real. That's not just a statement being made because we don't know ourselves, so we should know thyself. Like, that's a real thing. Because their actions with you, as far as, you know, the inquisitors, the colonists, or whoever are concerned, their actions with you are going to be based on, do you know yourself? Most times, if you're spiritually lined up and you know yourself, they leave you alone when you go to them, even if you're at fault, because they'll see you coming before you even come in the door. Before, you know what I mean, like there was a Moor that, I think this year is when they set up his court date for. But he was dealing with something or whatever. He, you know, beating him up with law, and they said, you know what? Okay, you know what? We'll just put this court date ahead, you know, whatever. And they go about their business, you know. And this is maybe 4 months later or something. Checking, you know, the paperwork. The court said, you know, they got to come to court. Okay, I guess I got to deal with this or whatever. Goes check the court date. The court date's for Christmas Day. Now, like, now when they set up the court date for Christmas Day now, what's your position now? If you get a thing, you go to court, they say, you know what, we're going to adjourn this. And they put a date ahead. And then you find out that the day is Christmas. You taking these people serious? If they're giving you a court date on Christmas? You know courts close on Christmas Day, especially if it's a Sunday or something like that. Forget any other day of the week. You can't take these people serious when they're doing things like that. But why they do that? Because that Moor, his spirit's like across the street, his auric field is. His auric field is, you walk in a room and silence, no matter who's there, just because, you know, right? So, and that's based on, you know, him studying or whatever. This is here to them. Moor is here. Moor isn't something external. And once you internalize it, once it's like you're breathing, like you're blinking, like you're, you know, crack your knuckles or whatever like that, you know, wake up, brush your teeth. Once it's like that, normal, then start doing stuff. Then start talking about, you know, challenging people for who they are or whatever like that. Until that time, slow down and digest this information. Because this is not going to be taught in all the other schools of thought. As we already know, because we already been there. You know what I mean? But people coming in, you're not going to get this information in other schools of thought. And the only way that you're going to get this information in other schools of thought is if you figure it out and find it in those schools of thought yourself and extract it. Because they ain't telling. And if they do tell, they're telling it in some kind of code or whatever,
or throw something out, and hopefully nobody picks up on it, or the wrong people pick up on it. Because the right people pick up on it, they'll start extracting that stuff, putting that stuff out, show these people how stupid they are, that their own leaders are telling them that they're Moors, their own leaders are telling them that they're indigenous, that they're native, their own leaders is a maroon or whatever like that, but they're not gonna get down with the fact that there's a historical connection that anybody who says they're dark skinned has to Moors. There's a historical connection. Anybody that's classified as Negro, black, colored, dark skinned, minority, whatever, they have some type of connection, some way, shape, or form to Moors that they never recognized before.
Just to say too that if they are giving it to you in certain arenas, you may have to be making agreements with them. And this is where sort of these blood oaths come in, right? And they give you that information, but then if you decide to expose that information, you may be held to a certain penalty, right? That's the first thing. And then secondly, it's going to take, what Grant you were saying before, about trying to learn this stuff and being able to sort of have it in your aura of work, is that you have to undo all of the spells and the sorcery and all the indoctrination that they have put on you. That's not going to happen overnight because it's been ingrained in you.
Right.
So it's going to take time. It's going to take time for you to absorb that and then be able to be it.
Right.
You can't just walk up. You can't read something and then walk up tomorrow. It's like doing anything, learning anything.
Right.
It's going to take time.
And again, this is that's part of us wanting things immediately or easy.
And that's the dependency thing that
Is the dependency.
gotten into here. This, you'll get that.
Right.
Once you've done that, you sold your soul.
Literally. And most of the time, you don't know who you sold it to. So it's not like you can go get it back after it's gone or whatever. Especially after you come into consciousness. If you're not grounded, when you come into consciousness, you're going to go into one of these groups out here and get sucked into those vacuums. And never know about this. Go to your grave as Negro blacks thinking you came over here on a slave ship or whatever, when you have all this land, this vast estate that you never even considered as yours. Right? So once Moors take the position of, looking at what they're doing, recognizing what they themselves are doing. Like people saying, like we had a question about claiming property, and my situation is such that I need to do this right now. Panic situation or whatever like that. They don't panic. They've been bankrupt since '33. They're chilling right now. The panic comes from us thinking that they have some kind of authority. The panic comes from thinking that they have power because they send paper to terrorize you, red letters on it or whatever. You owe, overdue with big letters written across the thing. That's paper terrorism. And then we fall for that thinking, oh yeah, they got some authority. I need to, how do I deal with this? Because, if I don't, when, simple thing, they send you something, you send them something.
But also, the second big one from you also having made some bad moves, whether you were in the dead state or not, gotten you into a position where you feel you have a time thing on top of it.
Right. Some type of restraint. Right.
For example, someone's traveling in the conveyance and they've got, let's say, some so-called illegal drugs in there.
Right.
And they get caught up on that.
Pulled
over
or whatever.
And then all of a sudden, or they've got hung up, and all of a sudden they want to solve this problem right away.
Right.
And you should have been walking properly. And that's where karma and all that other stuff comes into it.
Right.
If you're in the wrong place, you're in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. You can't expect
the right thing to help you get you out of the wrong stuff that you're doing.
Whether you were in a dead state or not.
Right. It's a conflict. It's a conflict of interest. And unfortunately, that's majority of our situations. Majority of our situations is, punch in the face. Oh, now I need to know about nationality because I need to sue this guy because he just punched me in the face or whatever. But what were you doing to get punched in the face in the first place? Well, you know, he had some grass there, and I was walking on the grass, but, you know, the sign that said don't walk on the grass, but, you know, I'm a Moor, so I just walked on the grass. Well, you know, you put him on notice before you walked on the grass. You let him know that, yo, I'm going to be walking on your grass, you know, I'm Moorish American, you know, let me know it's my land, whatever. Or you just went over there, violated their whatever that they had there. Even if it was fraudulent. Because you still have to let them know.
Not only that, we have to be better.
Right?
We have to be better than them, or we're going to expect to get what. Remember, they were getting that from us.
Half the issues that we have is because we did it to them. Why are we being taxed at us? Because we tax them. No representation. Why are they stealing our conveyances or whatever like that? You know, you do something, they take your stuff off the street, impound it, tell you $500 a day and all that stuff, because we took their boats and stuff like that when we were in power. So it's all, you know, cycle. It's all cyclical. Everything what goes around comes back around and all that stuff. Right? So our immediate thing is to get people with the correct concepts first. Get people with the correct concepts. The correct concept is that, you know, we're not Negro, black, colored, not African, Ethiopian, all these labels that we've been told we are, right? We're Aboriginal, Indigenous, we're Native, you know, we're the first people to populate the planet, right?
In modern times, those people are known as Moors.
Right? Modern, right? Those people that had all this high science knowledge, whatever like that, that kind of lost that. They lost that as Moors and got called all these different names in order to detach them from getting back the stuff. Because if we know, Moors know that when we were in Negro, black, color, whatever organizations, groups or whatever, only thing that went back to was slave ships, as far as Negro, black, color, African, whatever is concerned. Only when you got into other names, you know, Phoenician, Carthaginian, Sumerian, Atlantean, did you start getting into outside of the Americas and Africa perspective of our people, right? Like we don't really know about there's, you know, us in Cambodia, right? It wasn't something that was part of the quote-unquote black experience in America. Because as soon as we start talking that stuff, as soon as we start talking, or as soon as we start going there, it turns into, you know, deflection. Always deflecting us from the higher of things, you know? Say that things are occult, say that things are, you know, witchcraft, demonic, you know, no, you don't need to know that or whatever, or if you know that, you're demonic or whatever, when it's not really how it goes. We have been so conditioned, we have been so trained, we have been so indoctrinated that to get out of it is not going to be some overnight, oh yeah, I got this paper, download this paper, oh, send to these 7 people, oh yeah, now I'm free or whatever, I could do whatever I want. No, it ain't going down like that.
It would be nice, you know, it would be good if it went down like that, you know, but it's not going to go down like that because we've been too indoctrinated for too long for them to take a position of yielding.
Well, they're in the power seat, so hold the power seat right now, and they're not giving it up. They're not going to give it up easily.
Next question is discussing United States Code of Law, Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141 to 143. We can act, I've heard you say we can act as our own consuls. Also, the certificate number. Some are yapping that the tax exemption that we know is non-obligation is due to a non-profit status as opposed to a national status. So the first question with regard to the United States Code of Law, Chapter 22, or Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141, and consuls. Noble Ali told the Moors in the divine warning to enforce the Constitution. So when we go to Article 6 of the Constitution, Article 3. Article 3, Section 1. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges both of the Supreme and inferior courts shall hold their offices during good behavior, and shall at all stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. Section 2. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public members and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, and those in which a state shall be a party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crimes shall have been committed, and when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such a place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act, or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during life of the person attainted. So we go back to Section 2. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. So when we're mentioning, and make sure you go check Title 22, Chapter 2, Section 141, 142, and 143, right? The idea is that as the people who actually set up
everything, as the people who put everything in place for there to be a quote-unquote United States. Once that gets overthrown, which has happened, right? Once the position of we gave these people the authority and they abused that authority, they quit their position. They can't claim to be that anymore if they're saying opposite of what the Constitution has laid out for them to be, right? So when they say Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction, but then Moors are gonna go send, writ of removal because their case is in a lower court, and the writ of removal is for them to tell the lower court, or the writ of removal is for them to tell the higher court, to tell the lower court that you guys don't have no jurisdiction to hear this. We have to hear this, right? They're not taking that position of doing that. No different than when Moors say, I'm going to go file stuff at the county. And then they go to the county and the county is blocking them from filing their own stuff that they should be able to put on the public record in that county. It means that people sold out. It means that people are claiming to have judicial quote-unquote authority and don't have any. And if it turns out that those people are claiming that authority and they don't have it, then the only next person that has authority is whoever's in propria persona, whoever's in their right status, which, being consul, right, us making the claim of consul admits that we are that. That's why they say council. They say council hoping that we don't catch on that there's two jurisdictions, just like person, natural person, corporate person. There's council, which is somebody representing you, and then there's consul, where you're represented. And you're represented because of your status, not because you hired some guy to be whatever for you. So when we say, AAA 222141, as far as our exempt or non-obligation to taxes, right? Right? That's exact same thing. Title 22, Article 2, Chapter 2, Section 141. And then when you go there and you look that up, you realize that they're trying to say that, they can't use this anymore, or that's been repealed or whatever, right? Because of the power of this United States Code. No different than United States Code, no different than United States Code Title 18, Section 191, Section 1961 to 1968, which has to deal with racketeering, but they took that and made that section the RICO Act. And then they start pushing the RICO Act instead of pushing, United States Code, because if they push United States Code, then, again, the hole in the coffin, they have put their hand and nailed themselves in their own coffin. But in order to escape that, they create something and then have every people follow the stuff that was created. So, Dirty Moor is going to tell people, oh yeah, this has nothing to do with whatever, blah, blah, forget that, because it has no standing at law. If you use that, you're ABCD and they make up whatever they want to say. But there's Moors right now who's putting that, showing this number, and they're getting taxes off right now, which means it works. Which means that it's beating them. But, if the people who are talking against this, if they are working with the state or whoever, because their nationality card says, you know, the 14th Amendment citizen, and their nationality card says that, you know, if you have this nationality card, you belong to this group and you have to pay taxes, you know, as a U.S. citizen or whatever like that, then, of course, they're going to talk against this. That's why you don't listen to stupid people. Because we've been showing people 2, 3, 4, whatever years about using this number with receipts to prove that we get taxes off using this as our quote-unquote ban number, as our quote-unquote native sales tax ID number, as our quote-unquote whatever it is that they want to identify it as in order to say no taxes on this purchase. And then people are going to come talk against this when this is working. This is getting people to not pay taxes. And it's not Europeans or whatever, it's Moors with fezzes on that's talking about, oh, you know, Moors use this, they're violating something the Prophet said or whatever. But this is working. Don't listen to crazy people. Because guarantee, majority of people's position, all right, fam, please. Majority of people's position is to get us to give up our birthright, which is free, natural, in harmony with the universe, give that up in order for somebody else to be our Muhammad, like we're talking about. And they're not telling you about nothing about Muhammad or whatever, but they got you convinced that they're it. So, you know, follow them or whatever. Oh, yeah. Go for next week. Okay, all right, please, Lord. Right. So, you know, don't get caught up in Moors who are dirty, right? Moors who are dirty, trying to make us think or make you think, because you know, it's really people who don't have it here. You know, like the individual asking the question, I'm sure is asking for other people who are, you know, because the good thing, the good thing about social media discussions or whatever is that, you know, people who are against activity, people who are against civic mindedness, constitutionalist, divinity, you know, occult, whatever else, they kind of put themselves out there unknowingly because they think, you know, nobody else is paying attention or whatever, you know, that they could just game this person who's looking for knowledge, you know what I'm saying? And not knowing that in the background, there's people that's going and schooling those people while they choose to play the game on thread, right? There's people that's going in the background sending a message to that person, letting them know, yo, this guy don't want that guy because that guy's gonna lead you down. And then, you know, here's the track record or whatever. And then people eventually realize that, okay, that guy's gaming me, I'm not listening to them or whatever, right? Because it is clever the way people who don't want people to have this for free make the people who are giving this for free look bad, like they're doing something wrong. And then people buy it. Not just that they're doing that, but that people actually go for the fact that, oh yeah, you know, Kudro, don't listen to him because he's, you know, he swears. He's violating the prophets or whatever. And I say, oh yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's real or whatever. But then, you know, you got people all over the country calling Canaanland, just like you're here, you know, DC called, Virginia called. This is when we were just here. DC called, Virginia called, and somewhere else called to find out because, yeah, we saw your videos about, you know, we just want to get some clarity because, you know, my hand was in the pocket about to give this guy $1,200 for stuff that's free, right? So be mindful of individuals talking negative about being civic minded, being constitutional, peace mark, being astrologic, being into raising your frequency to a higher place where you can feel these people when they come to you with their trying to get you to be down with their stuff. Because really it's like people make some big money off raping people off their birthright. Like people made some good coin raping their own people, selling them papers, telling them that that's freeing them. Good money. And the people who got gamed, you know, instead of go choke that guy, you know, they talk negative about Moors. And they talk negative about Moorish nationality and Moorish judicial proclamations and, you know, Moorish tax exemption numbers, right? Opposed to just dealing with the fact that, yeah, you got game because you're stupid, you didn't study, you wanted a quick way out of whatever, and you got game for 1,500. Don't get mad. That's your fault. You studying. You drew a draw. You told them more since 1913. Study. What you asking stuff? Not that you know questions are wrong, but if you're gonna ask, how do I get off this case? Immediately, that individual who's a rapist knows I can sell this guy anything. All I have to do is prove that I can get you off. All I have to do is just make this seem like it's the way out. And I got you on the hook for any amount that I want to say. Because trust me, I know people who put up G's for 5 papers. Talk about, yeah, they just got their nationality, you know. I'm a Moor now because I got my nationality. And that's their own doing that. Not some foreigner. So when Moors start accepting the reality of the simplicity of this, that this is real simple. It's real simple. It's not Negro black colored. Okay, if I'm not Negro black colored, then next logical question, you know, what am I then? And then just trace them back. Ask people. Just don't talk to people out there. You realize that you're not Negro black colored and it's actually in your mind that you're not that. And you start asking other people and they start dealing with you like a human being finally. They stop dealing with you like, you know, like that. You know that you're onto something. When you start exercising 8222141, that's on your nationality card, and you start saying, yeah, you know, I'm tax exempt, you know, and put the card down, and they just take the card, give you back your stuff, and you get your taxes off, and they never question nothing. They never ask no questions about it. They just did it. You know something's up. And then you know that these guys are playing around. That's trying to tell you that, oh yeah, you know, well if you use this number, then you know it really means that you're a non-profit organization and not national. If you're non-profit, then that means you're a humanitarian. Okay, so if you're a humanitarian, Noble Drew Ali said uplift all humanity, then what's wrong with non-profit? What's wrong with being connected to something that's non-profit? Right? Now we're not talking about, you know, we're not talking about non-profit religious or whatever that has, you know, sanction to hope or whatever. We're talking about an organization that is humanitarian, an organization that is Rotarian. If it's Rotarian, then it has a duty to be non-profit. Matter of fact, all the profit that it gets is supposed to go right back into the thing to keep it moving. Which is really what the perspective of the Moorish movement is, the perspective of why we got all these DVDs on the wall, books on the wall, So if people support, see something interesting. Oh, that's interesting. What's the cost for that? Oh, put that in, bam, goes back into the pot, and you pay for rent. Like, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing wrong with that is people who don't know how to do that, or people who've been sucked into this vacuum of dirty people who are teaching people that, oh yeah, doing that's wrong, whatever like that. Where we're trying to help our people. We're not trying to cause issues for them. We're not trying to make this. Uh, um, we're not trying to make this people to come to this like a group, like we were talking about. The quality over quantity around here. We don't want no 8 million people up in here talking about 8 million hands up and everybody got tickets and they want more to help them get off tickets. You better go study it or something, because there's no way that we're gonna be completely free if there's people out there that call themselves Negro, black, colored still. There's no way that Moors, this is Moors in general across the board, are going to say, yeah, all of us are free if there's still people out there called Negro, black, colored people. Because they will use those people to fund their attacks on Moors. Just because. What else are they going to do? They're bankrupt. They don't got nothing. But if they put, a yellow thing on this guy's car right here, because remember, they can type up the plate and then the license come up, so they know he's Asiatic. They know what job you got. They know you got a loan, line of credit card. Just stick something on his bill. You can pay. Stick something on. Goes on to court. Pay $5,000. Bam. Now they got $5,000 in their pocket. They can fight Moors a little longer. Just because Moors are, well, I don't know if, and should I use the stamp on, well, what if they say, what if they, as soon as you start going there, like, you're admitting that they have some type of power. Right? And also, too, remember that majority of people who talk against civic, people who are talking against civic perspective, people who are talking about constitutional. Anybody who's against those people, more than likely work for Rome. Anybody who's speaking against Moors that speak from a constitutional perspective, Moors who speak about Great Seal, Moors that speak about writs, Moors that speak about judicial proclamations, nationality, noble duality, things of a de jure nature. When you hear Moors speak against that, more than likely, they have some type of connection with Rome. And their job is to divert people's attention away from the simplicity of this and make this advanced. You got to file papers with this guy, and then then fill out this thing and then send this in with a birth certificate. And then if the birth certificate has a number, you can claim the number for $1 million and all this type of stuff and get people into stuff that they shouldn't even be in. Just because. Anybody have any questions?
With the accepted value as being the owner of the straw.
Yeah.
That is our tool, correct? And we are able to use that as a tool. The straw as a tool, right?
Right. Accepted for value. Straw man. When accepted for value applies to put it like this. Accepted for value is really
a promise to pay. Right? So if somebody says, pay 200, right? And then they send that on something, and then the guy signs it and says, okay, yeah, whatever. You can accept that for value. The thing that they send, and send that back as payment, because they signed it. Which means that if they signed it, and they signed it in blue ink, right? They're acknowledging that there's credit. The credit is coming from the fact that this thing is written in all capital letters that they sent, right? So being that it's written in all capital letters, it's tied to the birth certificate, which is the straw man, which has the, the price tag on it, 40 billion, whatever, right? So accepted for value is a promise to pay. And then when they get the promise to pay, what they're going to do is that they're going to discharge it. Right? And then that's clearing the debt.
What about a set off is the same thing, right?
Right. So a set off is, the ledger. You got, credit, debit. They say you owe 500, set it off to the credit side.
Yeah.
And then books are balanced. With accounting, whatever, right? But again, it's like, all these things are those diversions to get us to not focus on uplifting fallen humanity. These things are to get you to be all these things, these processes are to get you in the concept of one man as an island.
Yeah.
Anyway, because once you start getting into these processes of you filing something or whatever like that, you're saying that you're doing this. If you're doing this, then you're not a nation. If you're one individual doing this process. Because remember, all these processes, like this thing that they say pay, right? This is going to come from somebody who has some corporate logos on top of it or whatever. And you go file UCC to get straw man. This is going to come on some paper that has some corporate logos on it. That doesn't have our stuff on it. Right? So because it doesn't have our stuff on it, then that means that's not our jurisdiction. And if that's not our jurisdiction, then what are we doing messing around with this stuff? How about we deal with the reality that we have an estate, and everything that is everything in our estate, they put it, everything that we own, right, that we claim to own, they have us be an all capital letters name so they can put that stuff in their trust that they created instead of it going in our trust as Aboriginal people. Right? So when things come into our trust, then they have no claim on it. Because it becomes allodial at that point. It's not feudal anymore. Right? So once it becomes allodial, now we have claim on it. If we have claim on it, then we don't need to be paying no taxes and we don't need to be writing off stuff and whatever because it's in our jurisdiction. But as soon as we start going into their jurisdiction to do things, right? Because remember,
once we now accepted for value, right? Opposed to accepted for value, right? Why don't we take the position that since 1933 they're bankrupt, and in the quote unquote New Deal, right? From this bankruptcy, they themselves said, right, that everything should be discharged. They never mentioned no acceptable value or nothing like that. They never mentioned no, promise to pay or file UCC1, claim the straw man in order to discharge. They just told people straight, if we're bankrupt, there's no money, then everything should be discharged. Automatically, just because. How are we going to pay when there's nothing to pay with?
So then the accepted value wouldn't be part of any of the ratings.
The accepted for value is really the bankruptcy of 1933 that nobody wants to talk about. Because if they start talking about that, then the people who are talking about accepted value zip their lips, because you guys are part of the U.S. democracy. So you can't even talk about, and the people who are talking accepted value are the free man sovereign guys, and the without nationality people who want to be in America and claim stuff, but then they don't want to say what their nationality is. Because then if they say what their nationality is, then obviously you have no claim to be talking about you're accepting something for value around here. You can go to Europe and you can do that stuff. You can't do that around here. And then they get Negro, black, colored people to jump on accepted for value, thinking that, yeah, that's freedom, when really they're enslaving themselves because they're trying to accept something for value when they're in a dead status. And immediately they're whatever they're trying to accept for value is neutralized and they're in contempt. Because you're making a claim from a fraudulent status that could only happen in the highest level of citizen. Stateless person can't talk about accepted for value. And Moor can't talk about accepted for value because, we've been here before the bankruptcy. So you guys already know that all we got to do is put our nationality card down, just give me the stuff. Because your building that you got saying that you're, whoever you are, is on my land. So if your stuff is on my land, then that means everything that you got in there, I have access to. But then, but that takes Moors, not some Moors, and then Negro, black, colored people over here paying for everything, making their fiction stuff stay alive. It's everybody saying, oh yeah, we're Moors. But then, if we would have followed the prophets since to now, we would not have no issues like what we're talking about now, accepted value and all this stuff. It wouldn't be an issue. But it's an issue because, our own sold out, and then we don't want to recognize that they sold out. We want to still honor them, honor still whatever, because, he gave me some knowledge when I was in a dead state. How come he didn't tell you that even more when you're in a dead state? How would he tell you about this story? You're black Asiatics and you're, Africans of the whatever, and they never told us that we're Moors when they knew. And they were probably, getting their little, tax breaks and all that type of stuff, not telling nobody they got tax breaks. Right? So, it's not a negative per se, accepted for value and these things, right? But, let's not put the cart before the horse and deal with things that, you don't really have to deal with per se. Like we're saying, and the only reason that I'm making this statement about the you know, we're supposed to just get stuff for free when we put our nationality card. I don't care what it is, because of the the Sri Lankan brothers. From a few weeks ago, we went to the convenience store to go buy some chips. They were trying to charge tax, put down the nationality card, and they were, you know, kind of not accepting the fact that, you know, we were the natives or whatever. And when they really accepted the fact that we were the natives, after, you know, telling them and having discussion with them, you know, maybe 5 minutes or whatever, but we're talking about pertinent things. Like, we know that India company is British. And there's no place in the world called India. Like, yeah, you know, okay, yeah, you know. We know about Ceylon in Sri Lanka. We know about Mauryan dynasty, Gupta dynasty. Would I know that if I'm not native? And they were about to give us the stuff for free in the store. Here, take it. I can't charge you because you're native. This is what Hindustani guys say, Sri Lankan guys say. We can't charge you because you're native. We have to beg him to take the money. To show him like, yo, it's brotherhood. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna support your stuff. Rather than just take stuff for free or whatever. You know what I mean? Because we know that there's higher energies. You know what I mean? We don't deserve this for free. Like, I'm just a Moor 7 years or whatever. I didn't earn this. I haven't been down with this since 1913. I was Negro black colored. I'm just getting into this right now. So I'm not gonna, you know, oh, you recognize, oh yes, you know, well, give me 5 bags of stuff or whatever too, and give me some pops in the fridge or whatever. I'll take advantage because, you know, somebody recognized, you know what I mean, the stuff. You know, you're not gonna do that because it's gonna come back to you. You know what I mean? You know, God will leave it with, yeah, we got all this stuff or whatever, and then the guy comes, Jackson, he takes all the stuff back. You know what I'm saying? Right? So we know it's legit. Like, we know that there's some, you know, it's broader than we even perceive. You know what I mean? Like, we think that it's broad, but it's like 500 times more broad than we think it is, saying that we're Moors and we know ourselves and all that. You know what I mean? It's right.
Foreigners will jump up in first.
Right?
The foreigners jump up in first and say,
Well, you can close the door. Sorry.
They say, yeah, he's a Moor, he's right, he knows what he's talking about.
Right.
You
You know?
know,
Yeah.
And then they have, on their register, it's number 8. It's diplomatic status.
Right.
Instead of the native status.
Right.
The natives are different than us.
Right.
We're indigenous, right? So we're first, and then we get that status.
Right. So once we take what all this stuff that we're finding out about, right? As far as Moorish nationality, you know, all that's concerned, all these things that we're finding out about, it's really for us to take and digest, right? Not take and try, see if it works because, you know, this guy said it worked for him, so I'm gonna try and work and see if it works. That's injury you're asking for. Because if your spirit's not right, it ain't working. If you try to put something out there and you're not really sure about what you're putting out there, then more than likely, you know, something's coming back that you're not going to be prepared for. Because you know, it's like when they say accepted for value, you know, that's contract. That's offer and acceptance. Right? That's you know, give and take. You know what I'm saying? It's really contracted. It's not really, you know, a process of accepted for value. It's really, okay, how do you live within contract? We're under occupation. So to accept something for value is to recognize that nothing has value. And the value is based on blind faith. The value is based on what we say is valuable. So if I could convince the guy who sent me the bill, right, saying pay whatever, if I could convince him that, well, you know, I see you guys have a dotted line right here or whatever, right? And then under the dotted line, when I flip this thing over, there's a square box or whatever, and then it says remittance on it, and then there's a square box, and then the stamp's supposed to go in there to give this some type of legitimacy, right? And then when you go to the bank, you give them fiat, and then they tear off the bottom part, and then they stamp it, and connect the fiat to that thing, and then send that in as payment. Those people just got paid twice. They're taking the fiat, put it in their pocket, and then they're taking the remittance thing, that bank stamp, and then that's becoming the money to pay for that debt. But then if you do that without giving the money, then they're not really going to go with it because, you know, they're going to pretend like, you know, you can't do that process, blah, blah. You have to, you know, give the money. Because, you know, we got caught in the game. Right? They've been playing the game and we got caught. And we realized, oh, hey, you guys are playing the game or whatever. But, you know, we're on the court. Nobody's stopping the game in the middle without me calling a timeout or whatever. Game's going on. Whether the guys stand there, do nothing, or get involved. Game's going on. So being that we're in it, you know, we got to keep playing until the timeout calls. You know, and we're all out of timeouts. So we got to wait for them to call the timeout. And they ain't calling. So as soon as they call, they already know. You know what I mean? We're going to go to the ref, make our complaints. You know, this guy's holding me or whatever. That guy over there, he's doing whatever. This guy, he right here, he doesn't have a number on his jersey. What the hell is he even doing in the game? Right? You're not even the real ref. And then their whole, everything's shattered at that point. And they're not going to let this thing fall just because, you know, they recognize Moors. So as soon as they recognize Moors, like we're talking about all class, as soon as they recognize, hey, you guys say that they're Moor, okay, fine, you know, dismissed, or okay, fine, accepted for value or whatever. As soon as they do that, they put their hand outside the coffin and they're nailing themselves in. And their stuff is over. And they're not giving up that easy. So we might have to, you know, get some blows. We might have to suffer a little bit, you know, as Moors, because, you know, we didn't get into this overnight, so we can't get out overnight. It's not happen like that. It's never going to happen like that. So that's why I draw these head study. Because if you're studying, more than likely you're not outside, so that means, you know, they're not going to be bothering you. You're only going outside for immediate stuff. Other than that, you're home studying. Or you're on work studying. Or you're whatever. But the theme is studying. No chill time to just do stuff. Even if you go somewhere, that's a study excursion. Whatever you decide to do. You go to the mall, that's studying somehow. Figure it out. I don't know, but going to the mall should be studying. You know what I mean? Because believe me, all that stuff, accepted for value and all that stuff, yeah, it's legit. It's a process, you know what I mean? But these people aren't, no way. You know? And then we have to also, you know, put ourselves in their shoes. You know what I mean? Let's look at it from their perspective. That they've been doing whatever that they're doing. We're coming up saying that we're Moors, you know what I mean? Come to court, you know. You're a delegation of authority and all this stuff. Who prove your claim or whatever. You think, fake warrants all day on all these guys. Get them out of circulation ASAP. Because, you know, if they're talking like that, then that means they have the competence to wake up somebody else. And if there are two of them start coming up in here, you know, if three of them start coming up here, and then all these dumb people start realizing, oh, how come every time these guys with these hats come in here, all their stuff gets adjourned to 2 years later? Or they get taken out the back, you know what I mean? And They don't have to come back here no more. Something's up. How come these guys with these hats, they just show this card and they get taxes on? But they look like me though. And I don't have that access. Like, you know what I mean? How come I don't have a card or whatever? I'm not, you know, but their card's not a native card. They said they made that up themselves or whatever. No, our nationality card. You know? Because Negro black colored people question stuff. You know, especially when they see it in action. Well, they question stuff. You know what I mean?
Walmart like it was a movie theater.
Yeah.
Everywhere I get, because I walk in my clothes all the time.
Yeah.
So I went in and they brought me to the front, and at the fast line, the expressway.
Right.
So they, instead of having the people that were already in line go to the line, they brought me there first.
Yeah.
And then it says, hey, listen, you have to deal with him now. He is indigenous, so he's like more. So then they go, oh, well, okay. And then they dealt with it, and everyone's like, talking to us.
Yeah. What's going on? Like, who is this
guy?
guy?
Yeah. So I walk out now, the people walk outside just after me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they go, it's that guy with the... And they're making
Yeah.
like, what happened there? It's like,
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And you know, that's for them to be inspired.
Yeah, and they want to know.
Yeah, for them to be inspired. That's why, you know, Moors are supposed to be active. Because our activity is going to show people that, you know, when we say we're native and we put down card, we get taxes off. That's real. It's not, you know what I mean? Some Negro black stuff that we're doing. You know what I mean? Even that.
That's because I know, you know?
Right?
I know.
Right? And then also too, you know, like for example, if you take the position of you had your national headdress on and you went somewhere, store or whatever, and then they gave you the exemption without you showing the card. That means they know. That means that they know exactly what the hell's up. They know exactly what's up.
Square One,
right?
Walmart.
You know. There was one more. I found Peace Granchi Kudro Arwa L. I found this story of a so-called encounter between this Sudanese hating Orthodox Muslim named Sati Majid, S-A-T-T-I, Majid, M-A-J-I-D, and Nobu Ali. This Sati Majid is said to have set up societies to spread Islam and serve the Muslim communities in America. Muslim Unity Society, Islamic Missionary Society, Red Crescent Society, Islamic Benevolent Society. Now he said he met Nobu Ali around 1920, but they don't have proof that it happened. And Sati says that he wrote to Nobu Ali and advised him to change his name and burn his book, the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then he even went so far as to bring charges against the Prophet with the US government, but they shot him down and said no. He still didn't quit. He then goes in and tries to get a fatwa from Al-Zahar in Cairo to condemn Ali. But the real kicker is the mess that these so-called Arab Muslim scholars talking reckless against Prophet Nobu Ali without even talking to the Prophet. And you can for further information, you can, this probably there's a PDF out there called A Sudanese Missionary to the United States. A Sudanese Missionary to the United States, Sati Majid in North America and his encounter with Nobu Ali
prophet of the Moorish Science Temple movement. And if anybody, if you can't find the PDF, just send an email, canaanlandguide@gmail.com, and we'll send you the PDF for that.
And also too, with regard to this Sati Majid Joker, you could also get Journal of the Moorish Paradigm by Hakeem Bey, issue number 13, where he talks about that, because it's clear when we put this out there already too. It's clear that the Muslims recognize and know who Noble Drew Ali is. It's not a secret. They know that he's the founder of Islam in America. They know that he came here to tell Negro black colored people that they're Moors, they're not, these fictions that they agreed to. They know that we're Muslim and we're not Muslim. They know that we're not Sunni and Shiite, and we don't have to go run around cubes in Mecca and go kiss black stones in order to be Muslims. Right? They know that. So when we say, we honor Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and we're talking to Muslims, and we say, yeah, we have a Quran and all that stuff, and they're like, well, how you guys' Quran doesn't look like our Quran and all that stuff like that? Immediately let them know that you're Sufi, so they can leave you alone, stop badgering you about, why don't you come to Mecca and stuff like that? How come you don't come to the mosque and all that? Because as soon as we don't do something according to the tradition, we're not devout Muslims. But they have sisters got skin, only this much skin showing or whatever. Talking about they respect women or whatever when they're telling them wear stuff. You know what I mean? And telling them Allah is He and all that, right?
Last set of questions. How does one obtain an allodial title for property in Canada if it is still possible? Because when I researched, I found it's no longer possible to do this in North America.
Now, when we say you cannot get an allodial title for property in Canada, the reason why it can't be done mainly is because Canada is a private corporation and they don't deal with allodial title. Right? So, the two jurisdictions that we're dealing with is allodial versus feudal. So in a feudal jurisdiction, right, they have deeds. In an allodial jurisdiction, they have titles, right? So our position is always allodial, right? And this means that the lords have no jurisdiction. And then, when you talk about the lords, we're talking about the Inquisition, talk about Inquisition, colonists, pilgrims, etc. Crew that came over here. Because their position of coming over here was even to escape these feudal stuff that was going on in England. And they came over here so they can be, not fully allodial, but at least have a little bit of their property or whatever. because they were losing everything. They were losing some to us, and then they were losing some to Europeans who were causing them problems too. Right? Now the position of how this, right, how is mainly studying trust law, which is a broad jurisdiction, but there's a good should be up there. There's a good trust booklet. Tracking that. There's a good trust booklet called Wise, Concise Trustee Handbook, a guide to the administration of an express trust under the common law, functioning under the general law merchant. So, allodial is common law practice, which doesn't come from England, right? So when they say, England created common law, that's a fraud, right? Common law, which comes down to constitutional law. So you can't have constitutional law without common law being the undertone. And allodial title, again, is conceptual. Allodial title isn't some paper that you have and you have this paper and it says allodial, so now it's free. Allodial is a concept of recognizing what feudal is. And anything opposite of feudal is allodial. And everything that these people do is feudal. So our position has to be thinking allodial. That, if you have, let's say, with traveling, right? If you say that you're a driver, you're saying you're in the feudal jurisdiction, right? If you say that you're a traveler, then you're in the allodial jurisdiction. If you say that you're if you say you got a deed, you're in the feudal. If you say you have a title, you're allodial, right? So it's a concept that once we apply the concept mentally, knowing what this is, knowing what allodial is, not that it's a field of study like trust law, right? But knowing this concept of allodial versus feudal, we would be able to recognize what's what and what jurisdiction everything lies in, or what jurisdiction it doesn't lie in. So if somebody says, they're going to issue warrant, that's feudal. Especially if it's saying, do something now. Because allodially, you'll at least have 7 days or whatever, somebody will send you something, you have a right to get some type of disclosure. And you get disclosure, then you present your case after you get disclosure. That's how stuff runs in allodial, right?
Is there a way to maintain a license without all the documentation the government holds against us as citizens? Right?
The best way, ultimately, you technically can't, because that's a totally different jurisdiction. But again, conceptually, if you understand what's going on, you understand who's who, what, right? The only way that you can survive, survive is reserving your rights, all rights reserved, UCC 1-103, UCC 1-308, 207, without prejudice. Then, you know, that's the signature line or whatever. That's the signature line. And then write that on the line, and then do your little signature or whatever over that. So that way, this so-called license that they try to impose on you, based on you reserving your rights, you can bring up the issue of status whenever somebody challenges you to present that as identity. Right? Where we got screwed is that we didn't realize that a license comes from slavery. Right? In order for the slave to go deliver or whatever to the slave master B from slave master A, you need a license. That's what they were talking about. We talked about this in 12 Years a Slave. When he came out the bushes and the guys were about to get lynched.
Yeah.
And then they were like, "Hey, nigger, come here." And then they grabbed him by his neck and they were like, "Oh, somebody sent you here to do something or whatever." And they sent him on his way because he had a license from his slave master. But those other guys, you know, they were done for. Right? So the idea of you know, having a license still, even though we have this information, right, is because you're not gonna go out there and, you know, just go injure yourself because you found out something new, right? You're not gonna find out, you know, something this vast, right, and just apply everything. You're gonna take it in stages based on, you know, what's most important to your, you know, livelihood or whatever. I mean, you got, you know, like we say, you drive bus for a living, you found driver's license fraud, don't throw away your license and talk about, you know, I don't need a license to drive this bus or whatever like that, because they will let you go, you know, because the contract says, you know, you need a license, whatever, right? It's not a compromise. It's because you're reserving your rights. So once you're reserving your rights in dealing with these criminals, you're kind of giving yourself a little bit of leeway to be able to slowly get yourself out of this thing, you know, and you know, until it becomes part of you. Until it's part of you, don't throw away the license. Until it's part of you, don't get rid of to whatever that you're trying to get out of. Because you're going to go get rid of it and then, you know, somebody's going to make a claim or, you know, they might, you know, let's say something beneficial. They might say, you know, because of, you know, you proclaim your nationality, so you threw away social number or something, right? And then 5 years later, they come back and say, you know, oh yeah, I'm checking the records of the whatever, and you know, all caps name that you said that you're not no more. Well, you know, we owe you this check, you know, 50 million, or you know, and then people will not take it because oh, you know, I'm more now, so I can't take the money because, you know, if I take it, then I'm gonna. But you know, everything's based on contract. If they're gonna give you 50 million, trust me, they're gonna tell you sign something. When they say sign, you know, your little stamp, you know, reserve rights, sign over that, get your 50 million, you know, make sure you know, don't just be nuts with it, you know,
go to RV Bay, buy some books or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Don't just, you know, I got the 50 million, you know, life's good, Cancun and whatever, you know.
In respect to not having a license and everything, it goes back to like the accident, like how would like the liability
So the liability really comes out of the insurance, not necessarily the license. Even though, you know, in order to get the insurance, you need a license, right? So, right. So this is why in jurisdictions where Moors are exercising right to travel, they have their own list called, you know, right to travel or whatever, right? And then their right to travel is tied to some assurance, which comes back to the same thing of fuel or allodial. And even if they do have insurance, you know what I mean, it's not some, you know, every month you pay. You pay once and you're covered for as long as you have, you know, this quote unquote license with this quote unquote plate that you got from this quote unquote body of Aboriginal, you know, that are exercising that way, which you could do, right? You don't necessarily need to have the license or whatever, right? Because as Moors, there's jurisdictions of Moors that they've been had their own plates or whatever like that. They don't get bothered by nobody. Nobody's hassling them, stopping them. If they get tickets, you know, they beat them. You know, the tickets are just part of the game, you know what I mean? Just so that, you know, European doesn't look too bad like he's getting his butt kicked around here, you know, because there's these guys who, you know, how come these particular guys have their own plates around? How come like everybody doesn't have their own plates, you know? So, and then that too is another thing with, you know, with the process, you know what I mean? Because, you know, the Moors that are involved in that process, like for example, there's Moors who said, yeah, we're gonna start up this thing, you know what I mean? Right to travel, start up a trust. Everybody put their property in the trust, and then we give you guys, you know, our own plates. We have our own license. We have our own whatever. Here you go. And everybody say, oh, you screwed out their corporate plates, put on their stuff, drive around. All their stuff got impounded. Because when you check the record, you know, they were still paying on those stuff that they caused it, right? So they're stealing people's stuff that they never paid for, right? That they have a contract saying that they're paying, and then the contract's in straw man name, and then they're trying to say, oh yeah, you know, I'm more, so I took it, you know, and then I put it in the trust for the Moors, but you had a contract that you got to pay $300 a month for that. You didn't dissolve that contract before you moved the stuff or whatever. You just said you're gonna just switch it over. No, and then all those people lost their stuff, and then they're mad at Moors because Moors made them lose their stuff when, you know, really they're stupid. Getting involved in stuff that they don't even know what it is. Doing stuff without having full knowledge of what it is. And then get caught up and then want to blame somebody else instead of blaming themselves for, you know, not being able to do the handstand properly before you try this stuff. On top of that, you're going on the beam and all that stuff. You do handstand. You never did handstand before. You know what I mean? You want to go off diving board. You don't know how to swim. Talk about, oh yeah, the pool drowned me. Right? It don't work like that. Start talking like that, people think you're crazy. Right? Now the picture I found yesterday had me questioning. Now this individual, younger sister, who's she's in high school or whatever like that, and she was watching one of these cartoons or whatever, Um, there's a cartoon with a grandpa on it that wears a fez or whatever. He has glasses, right? Uncle Grotto or something like that. Whatever. Some cartoon or whatever, right? So she's seen this thing or whatever. Man has a fez on, so she's tripping, it's fez on a cartoon, and not even she's watching it, her little brother's watching it or whatever. And then the cartoon's about, exercise your mind and, all this galactic whatever stuff where she's like, whew, can't believe this is in a cartoon or whatever, I just started getting this information. So, seeing that, but it's a European dude in the show, but he's wearing fez, but the Moors wears a fez. So, the youngster, the perspective is, what I mean? All over the place, right? So, came up to, well, I've been telling my friends or whatever like that. And, okay, so we agree that we're not black because, we're brown people. We're not Negro because Negro is Spanish, means black, right? And we're not colored people, because, we don't change colors, orange, blue, yellow, whatever, right? Right? You might say, right? So what are we then, if we're Moors, right? Like, how we prove that we're Moors or whatever? So the question now that she came up with was, would you be considered a Moor coming from, let's say, the Caribbean, having the tribe named Carib, right? The tribe name, right? Tribe named Carib. So as soon as you say tribe, you're talking about native, you're talking about Aboriginal, you're talking about indigenous, you're talking about Moors. Because that's what Moors are, Aboriginal, native, whatever, right? So as a Carib, right, that's how they get Caribbean. Because the Caribbean was run by Caribs at one time, and the Caribs are Moors who are indigenous, Aboriginal, whatever people, right? All this tying together with, on top of the, black history, never talk about this part of our history, right? During Black History Month or whatever, only talk about, slavery, whatever else, right? When this is an integral part of our history that nobody talks about. That we're actually Aboriginal indigenous people. We got pyramids here. We don't need to go all the way to Giza, $3,000 plane to go see a pyramid. We got pyramids in Mexico. We got pyramids in Peru. Yucatan got pyramids, right? Or in South America, having the tribe name Imara. Right? Once again, tribe name. As soon as you say tribe, you're talking about indigenous, Aboriginal, Moors. So all these things, tribe name, Carib, Arawak, Maroon, all these names that we know that identify our people, what was never told that attached to all that, Moors is attached to that too. Because if they attach Moors to it, then, they're opening up the stuff and they got their hand outside the coffin and then they let themselves into the stuff. Because they know more than they're letting on. But then when you figure it out, it feels better. Instead of somebody telling you about your stuff. When you figure out your stuff, that, we're tied to this or whatever. I mean, it's like great whoever. When I went to Barbados last, whatever, with grandma and she's going through the garden just picking stuff. Just go in the bush. Go pick that. Oh, you have something on your face? Just pick that, rub the bush on your face and you'll be alright tomorrow. That's Aboriginal indigenous culture. That's not some stuff she learned in Africa and brought over here on the slave ship. That's our culture. Right? And we know, once we realize for ourselves what this is, just come back to the same treasure. No matter if you say Carib, Arawak, Maroon, Olmec, Native, Cherokee, Iroquois. Right? Keep in mind, right? When we say well, there's so many tribes. How do we know which ones are Moors and which ones? How do we, do we have to do family tree to find out which tribe we belong to or whatever like that? Remember, Noble Drew is Cherokee, and he never called himself that. He's Cherokee, born and raised, but never called himself Cherokee. He said he's Moor. So, same thing applies to all these other ones that are tied to Cherokee, because Cherokee is one of the oldest ones. And then keep in mind, in case you didn't hear about the Cherokees kicking out all the black people, telling them that they're not native, and literally kicked them out. All the people that they say, yeah, come on, you guys are, well, black guys, come on over. Cherokees saying, sorry, black guys, we can't endorse you anymore. Because they realize that blacks being down with Cherokees make Cherokees black, and they lose their status. Because blacks are down with them. And once blacks are down with anything, it becomes dead in law. That's why, yeah, honors to, Elijah Muhammad or whatever, but we ain't no black Asiatics. Honors to, Runoko Rashidi for going all over the place, but we're not no black Asians and black Arabs and black whoever in some other part of the world that have an ancient history where the word black didn't even exist. But they're going to come back here with us, the dummies, you know what I mean, and tell us, well, yeah, the black Asians, we had stuff in the culture or ancient whatever, yeah, the black whatever, and then we buy that, $50 lecture, $50 DVD, buy books or whatever, support these guys with their fraud, selling us out. Because, we learned a lot from Runoko Rashidi or whatever, but, we know black anything. No black Indians. And black Sri Lankans. So even those people have a dynasty. Those people have a dynasty called Mauryan. Mauryan dynasty in East Asia. And dark-skinned people. When you go out and you go in all these Sri Lankan whatever stores and they got their little blue man holding a bowl with a quarter in it. that's not some blue man. That's us.
So that place that you just named in China, that would be the place where they have the pyramids.
That's India.
Oh, that's India.
Mauryan, yeah.
Oh.
The Mauryan dynasty. In China, it's the Shang dynasty. Shang, or Shang. And you search that, they will tell you about the pyramid history. They'll tell you about the mounds there.
Yeah,
got mounds in.
Archaeologists.
Yeah.
Down to the
Right. Yeah.
Something needed. Somebody needed.
Yeah. Because once it comes out that it was dark-skinned people, right? Once it comes out that it's dark-skinned people, to the world, dark skin, especially African, especially African Negro, is known as a blackamoor.
And then, like we said, you know, the Moors are the native, you know, Aboriginal, indigenous, right? What they did was that they got rid of this and then left us with that. And like we said, as soon as you hear somebody talk about Moor equals black, know that they're talking from a Greek perspective. But that's what the Greeks said. When they say Moor means black, they're talking from a Greek perspective.
Yeah, that's not a view.
Right? That's not something that everybody says. Because Moor doesn't mean black to the Philippines. Moor doesn't mean black to Sri Lankans. Right? Moor doesn't mean black to Moorish Americans. Right? Often I see names Aboriginal or Indigenous pop up when speaking about Moors. But if they are, and you come from a different tribe, would you still be considered a Moor? Yep. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. So we're there. Anybody have questions, comments, anything? Everybody's clear? No question? Sure? Sure? All right. All right. So we want to say Islam to all the Moors, give thanks, peace, love, and hotep. We'll see y'all sometime Wednesday or Thursday online again. From what I understand right now, we're open on Friday. Friday nights, I believe 7 p.m. Saturdays, well, next Saturday coming, we're going to be in Hamilton. We got a lecture in Hamilton on Saturday. Some more out there. We'll be here on Sunday, next week Sunday. We have a Skype lecture with Brother Jabbar talking about history of the Moorish Science Temple and the successorship after Noble Drew Ali died, who's the real successor, who the frauds are, and tying all the frauds to the people who are around today saying that they're Moors, but not telling people that they're from the fraud people that helped kill the Prophet. Right? Because there is internal history in the Moorish movement that isn't talked about. And most of the time it's not talked about is because, you know, the people with majority of the influence as far as, you know, what Noble Drew Ali bought perspective, it's the dirty people. They put out what they want to put out, you know, instead of putting out what's supposed to be put out so that the people could be clear with what this is, right? So, yeah, so we're just going to close out. Everybody who knows what's up. Anybody who's new, you can hold your peace until we close. Face the east. Stand and face the east. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe. Father of love. Truth. Peace. Freedom. And justice. Allah is my protector. My guide. And my salvation. By night. And by day. Through His holy prophet. Noble Drew Ali. Ashe. Islam. Peace, Moors. Peace and hotel. Moors. Islam. Yeah, they straight dotish, buddy. Straight dotish. Islam, Moors. Peace. Go put a lien on somebody and go, you know what I mean, sue, judge because, you know, you put your status on the record, they didn't recognize it, so we're going to sue, right? Because as a studious Moor, you know that those people who have a claim to be a court or claim to be whatever, they're bankrupt, dissolved since 1933, and they don't have any power whatsoever called governmental authority.
And the only governmental authority they have is what we give them. Because they say government official, and we go, well, let me see your whatever. Well, we already know they don't got nothing to show, to prove that they're government. They don't have nothing. They know they're going to go in the back, pull up, whatever, and say, oh yeah, here's my authority to be or whatever. But then, the plaque in front of the building says administrative building. And then the courthouse sign says business hours, not court hours. So when we hear them try to tie Moors to sovereign citizens, know that they're trying to tie your writs to paper terrorism. They're trying to tie your Aboriginal indigenous customs to some posse, comitatus, European, off the grid, free man on the land. This is how we get ourselves free from under the shackles of the government that's abusing people. When there's no connection. The perspective is that we are the government, which is why we're making these demands with writs, affidavit of fact. All our documents got seals on them. You're not going to find any sovereign citizen, European, whatever group out there claiming to be sovereign with a seal. You go check their documents online, and they don't got seals. And if their position is that they're sovereign, then they should have a seal. But now this is where it gets into us coming to the realization that the individuals like CSIS, FBI, RCMP, CIA, all these agencies that are coming after these individuals that call themselves sovereign or whatever, they're actually taking the right position, because those guys really are a fraud. But FBI, CIA, who else? They're not saying that they're a fraud too, which is the further issue, right? That they're a fraud, calling out some frauds, but they won't call out the fraud on themselves that they've been bankrupt since 1933. And the only reason that they have, buildings and whatever else that they keep building is because these idiots that think that they have a status going and voting and stuff like that, keeping these corrupt people in power, not recognizing that these people are fraud. What are you voting for? They're a fraud. They have no intention of standing up to anything constitutional or doing anything right or whatever, right? Just like there was found this article. Actually, I was thinking about you when I found this one right here. Innocent man arrested at baby shower and jailed, sues police. So the story goes, brother locked up on Thanksgiving weekend, in prison for the first time of his life. Could not wrap his head around how an afternoon at a cousin's baby shower had ended with his arrest and a 3-night stay in custody. Right? So he's chilling at the baby shower in the building of the house or whatever, right? Goes upstairs to the house to go chill. And when he goes upstairs to the house gets raided. And he gets arrested, dragged on the ground a little bit, whatever, he's in there, so he's going down for whatever's in the house. You're here, right? Alleges that, Toronto, quote-unquote, police officers, they're not officers, but they weren't elected to office. They went and applied for a job like anybody else out here. So they're not an officer. But, they have their minions to push this perspective to get everybody to, give energy to They are police officers. And once you give them the energy, then they're about to abuse. And you might be the one that they abuse because you gave them your stuff. Instead of calling them like they are mercenaries, highwaymen, criminals, right? Interesting. Sparks, then a tech support employee at a downtown law firm, says he spent the 2012 Thanksgiving weekend.
Are you planning to run it to 7?
Probably 6:30. Islam,
Please.
Peace and Hotep. We want to send a shout out to the Moors online that's continuing to stay in tune with Canaanland Moors. We also want to send a shout out to all the Moors worldwide, because we know that the order of the day is nationality and proclaiming our birthright. A couple bills, pay a couple bills. We have to put out there the new issue of the Masonic Gate is available. moorcivilletter.net/Masonic Gate. You can get your your copy of the Moorish Gate newspaper, which is distributed now in Canaanland as well. The paper is founded by Brother Abdul Talib Mosi Bey, who started up the Moorish Civil Letter website, Moorish, CIVILETTR.net. And Moorish Civil Letter is based in getting our people back into the correct perspective with regard to Masonry, with regard to Islam, with regard to Christianity, with regard to Judaism, with regard to astrology, astronomy, as well as etymology and knowing the origin of words. The other thing we got going on the 28th of the month at the Rock Pile East, 2787 Eglinton Avenue East. We got the Ghostface, the legendary Ghostface killer of the Wu-Tang, having a concert out here. And of course, yours truly with the family from One Oak. If you haven't heard from them or heard anything from them, go check it out. One Oak Hip Hop Music will be opening. I think we're second from what I heard last night at the rehearsal. We're second from Ghostface, so we're pretty close to pretty much opening for them. I think there's about 10 or 12 acts, and we're supposed to be going up the 11th. All right, we got the tickets. $40 for the tickets. If you want tickets for the Ghostface show, you can get at the Moor Science Temple of America, Canaanland Guide @gmail.com, and make sure you get them early, because the Europeans, they don't play. The Europeans love their hip hop, so they're gonna be getting their tickets. So make sure you get yours. Today's class is paperwork. Paperwork cannot save you. Paperwork cannot save you. Now, a lot of people have been to rvbaypublications.com and have downloaded their name declaration, correction, proclamation, and publication notice, as well as their judicial notice and proclamation. what we want to stress is the point we want to stress is the point that nationality is not because you have a card. It's not because you have a card or papers, right? One, because the card is just a piece of plastic or whatever, and papers is paper. So the concept of paperwork, as far as a Moorish perspective, means writs. The concept of paperwork from a Moorish perspective means writs. And writs are just written documents. The reason why we're putting this like this is because there's a thing out there called paper, and trying to cause confusion in so-called courts, right? When we say paperwork, Moors are talking about writ of discovery, quo warranto, default judgments, paperwork that's based in written documents that are sent to a jurisdiction in order to put a particular status, whatever, on the record, to give notice. Because a lot of Moors get themselves caught up in stuff by not being specific, thinking that if Moors say it, then that's what. If Moors say it, they'll probably lump you in with some other stuff. For example, in Fort Worth, Texas, James Michael Tessie was found guilty in January of assaulting a police officer in a shooting outside his home. According to news reports, Tessie and the officer exchanged at least 15 shots in July when the officer tried to arrest him on traffic warrants. Tessie, who was shot in the leg and face, claims he is a Moorish American, not a U.S. citizen. Right? Now, James Michael Tessie's claim, we don't know because they have Tessie here. That's not no Moorish American name or nothing like that. Right? But the fact that he was found guilty in January for assaulting, and then he, exchanged 15 shots, and he was shot in the leg, shot in the face, whatever like that. But then, when you go back to Noble Drew Ali, and Noble Drew Ali told Moors, those who carry a pocket knife, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, who's really at fault? If Drew Ali said don't carry a pocket knife, right? Then anything over and beyond the pocket knife is in supreme violation of what he laid down. And if you can defend it, then hey, everything will be all right. Because what times we're living in or whatever like that. Mobs out there, clan, skinheads, whoever else. Depending on where you live, you might need to protect yourself because it's not about not having a pocket knife out here. You need to have better have something out here. Because these guys put crosses on people's lawn and whatever. Right? So you might have to have something. But when it gets into things like this, it getting out, because Moors forget that when you say that you're Moors, you now become all eyes on you, especially if something goes wrong. Forget if stuff goes right, but when stuff goes wrong, all of a sudden all the cameras come out. CNN all of a sudden knows who the Moors are. You know what I mean? ABC or whatever, they got their top reporter reporting on whatever because, there was a shootout and the guy who was shooting out gave a Moorish nationality card. Right? So they're going to use it against Moors. So Moors have to be very, 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 very mindful of when they speak, especially to these criminals, and making sure that they know exactly what they're saying when they say things. Right? So we're putting it out there for Moors to recognize that paper terrorism is real, right?
But on both sides too, though, right?
From what perspective?
From the fact that what even they're doing as a de facto thing, that's paper terrorism as well.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, right? All of that, every document that they're giving you is a
form of paper terrorism as well, right? Everything that they send to you in all capital letters name is paper terrorism.
I came to this thought a little bit ago, or not a little bit ago, even just now, is that they go around the world focusing on everyone else about the so-called terrorist activity and the wrong that they do. Yet they're engaged in everything that they're trying to point everyone else to do.
Right.
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 That's the whole game, right? To keep you diverted, right? It's always been that diversion and separation, right?
And this was the motive of people trying to tie Moorish perspective to freeman, sovereign, citizen, whatever, right? Trying to make this mesh of two things that don't mesh, right? Which is why, Moors who are studious, constitutional, civic-minded, they don't play the perspective in custody after getting caught up in a police raid. Last week, filed $1 million lawsuit against Toronto Police Services Board Chief Bill Blair and 9 officers involved in the raid. The suit claims false arrest, negligence, assault, intentional infliction of mental anguish, malicious prosecution, and multiple breaches of quote-unquote Sparks charter rights. Right? So we're talking about his charter rights. His charter rights got violated. Right? The charter rights, for people who understand up here more that are outside of our jurisdiction, come from the Constitution out of the Constitution Act, which act, right? Act is not law. So the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that so-called, Negro, black, colored people in Canada say give them the right to whatever, do this and do that, is from the Constitution Act, which act is not law. That's why it's called the Act, and that's why it's actors, and they pay them millions of dollars to be something that they're not in a movie, and then after the movie's done, they stop being actors, they be themselves. Same thing with Constitution Act. So that's what an act is. Right? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and the play and all that stuff. Right? So his charter rights being violated and being put in the suit that's what was violated shows that he's a ward. W-A-R-D. Ward. And if he's a ward, he's property. And why is he property? Just like Dred Scott. He's saying that his name's Sparks, and he's suing some, so-called police officers or whatever like that for violating his rights. But he's suing in a European name when he's Asiatic, right? And this suit that he's filing technically is fraud and should be considered paper terrorism. Just like somebody else's stuff that they send violating something is called paper terrorism. His suit that he's filing as a European when he's Asiatic, which means that it's fraud off the bat. It's already fraud because he's not Sparks. So you can't sue in that name. Right? Suing in that name is paper terrorism. Because, he's faking. It's a bogus claim. But if they came out and said that this is a bogus claim, then they give up some of the game that they're playing. Whereas it's not about them giving up the game. It's about the game being perpetuated. So, Toronto Star is going to put him in the newspaper, have his picture or whatever like that, make this thing a big thing, start going through their little, past reports or whatever, and then somebody's going to come out and do a report on all the police, and people take advantage of people, you might be up in there, see your name, arrested for no reason or whatever like that. How come police are doing this? The black people are only getting this treatment. How come nobody else is going through all this stuff? And they'll have this big thing in the newspaper, for weeks or whatever. And then they keep talking about black people, and then the Charter of Rights being violated and all this stuff, and everybody goes with it. And all the black leaders get down and they jump on the bandwagon and they're like, yeah, we should sue them for all this stuff, when they're being paper terrorists, committing a fraud. Because ultimately, just like you were saying, with your situation, I don't want to sue them. It's not like I want to sue them. I just want to be compensated for, what you guys said that you did wrong. And then, I forgot the name of the people. And then, everybody who's thinking about suing, ex gratia. Ex gratia. So, sister was thinking about suing, and then, she was talking to some lawyers and stuff like that, and, everybody wants retainer fee, and everybody wants, and then one lawyer slipped and said, terrorism. There's a thing out there called paper terrorism, right? In 2012, in Georgia, they took a position in Georgia of, quote-unquote, fighting paper terrorism, and the FBI being done with it. Because their perspective is that anti-government individuals that call themselves sovereign or sovereign citizens continue to defy the law across the country, and government officials are fighting back. First thing we have to recognize and realize is that these so-called people, like we were talking about, that say that they're officials of something, they're not officials of anything, right? They're criminals, right? They have no sense of constitutional or no sense of respect for constitutionality. Their position is corporate. It's always going to be corporate, right? So if they're corporate, they're not official, but they have their little minions in, Southern Poverty Law Center and all these different little organizations, that push their position, right? So that they can keep the fraud going, keep the fraud alive, because, these guys came out and said the government officials are doing something. So that's the position that the quote-unquote dumb public take, that these people know what they're talking about when they say certain people are government officials. So in reading things that are put out there by the so-called government that's telling people that they're anti-government, right? We have to be mentally on point to recognize when they're playing these games. Like when they say, I'm Canadian or I'm American, but they're European. You can't be, native, Aboriginal, Indigenous, but if we trace you back, you're from Europe, right? Another thing with American, when you hear that people are identifying themselves as American, but they don't look like copper-toned people, they don't look like the true Aboriginal, Indigenous people like Olmecs, right? Know that claim of American does not just exist in North America, right? That claim of American is North, South, Central, adjoining islands, and anything else that was in this jurisdiction of the Americas. So if a European says, I'm American, or I'm Canadian, right? Our position is to question them on what jurisdiction are they talking about. So if you say you're Canadian, then technically you're saying you're America because Canada's in North America, right? But, Mexico's in North America. Mexicans don't call themselves Canadian, right? Peru is in America. But Europeans that say that they're American, they're not talking about Peru when they say I'm American. They're talking about the jurisdiction above Mexico and below Canada, which they identify on the map as United States, but they don't say that they're United Statesians. They might say U.S. citizen, right? That's probably right. They might say United States national or whatever, but they won't say United Statesian. Like they say Canadian, Brazilian, Mexican. Because if they say United Statesian, immediately you know that's a fraud because, it doesn't even sound like anything that you would say as a identification marker, right? For a people in a particular jurisdiction, right? So they enacted legislation making it a felony to file fraudulent liens against the property of public officials or employees, a sovereign tactic known as paper terrorism. Okay, so when Moors say paperwork, you got your paperwork, you send your paperwork to the court, what is the paperwork or whatever, right? We're talking about writs. We're not talking about liens